Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you again. Black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Charney.
And I'm your co-host, Shay Northrup.
Today we're going to talk about why it's better to build your own desktop computers. We talk about FCC and a couple other great stories. So we're going to just kick it off right at the top and why it's better to build a computer than buy a laptop. Now, first let's start out with why laptops are better. Is one, the portable. You could take it.
True.
You can take it everywhere. Now, if anybody here is old enough to ever do LAN gaming back in the day, dragging around your 20 or 30 pound desktop computer and all the other accoutrements is a giant pain, literally. So, having a laptop, especially one that's capable of doing any gaming at any decent frame per second, is the reason why you get it. You can take it to school, go to the coffee shop, but honestly, that's it. There are some negative drawbacks to that, like you can't upgrade. Now, one of the benefits of building your own computer is you get to spec everything from the motherboard processor on up. And generally what I recommend is, if you can do it, is I always build gaming computers. One being as gaming stuff is granted more expensive, but it'll last you. I build computers roughly every 5 years. Mm-hmm. My last computer cost me roughly $1,800, and I'm running dual SLI. I've got i7 quad-core processor. Now, I cheaped out on the hard drives. I'm using 3 500-gigabyte hard drives.
Okay.
So generally what I do is I have 3 drives, and I have one with the OS, and I don't install anything other than the operating system. I've got a program drive, and then I have a drive with all my files. Now, the reason I like having a drive with all my files, it's easier just to back up that one drive. That's the only thing I really worry about.
Right, and if you decide to ditch those other drives and ditch the computer, you can just have those files ready to go for your next build if you decide to completely move over.
Exactly. Now, I know in my future, though, I'm going to be I'm eyeing at least a terabyte or 2 for the file drive, just because that 500 gigabytes is going fast now that I'm doing a lot more video than I used to do.
Now, to play devil's advocate just a little bit, now, one of the things that you'll notice with laptops a lot more nowadays, at least since in the last couple of years, is laptops have become a little bit more modular. Now, I'm not so sure if you're going to be able to replace your motherboard and CPU. Highly doubt it. But you can update your RAM and stuff like that if you need it a little bit faster. And
there have been laptops. There are quite a number of laptops throughout the years that let you replace the video cards.
Yes, that has been a thing.
The problem with that, though, is, if I remember correctly, those video cards were hard to find and very expensive.
Right. Finding low-profile video cards, anyway, it used to be a burden, but it's become a little bit more available now, but even low-profile ones won't fit in your laptop.
So let's see. Oh yeah. So the other thing is you can fit more RAM. I've seen motherboards that have, like, mine currently has 4. I've seen motherboards with 8 or higher.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. And you can get all kinds of great little, like, if you want to switch out your CPU, they make CPUs now that run 6-core and 8-core, which is just incredible. I don't know if, does Intel do that? I know AMD does. I like AMD. They're a little bit on the cheaper side.
You know, I'll be honest, I don't know. I haven't really looked into building a new computer in a while. Like, usually what happens is, when I start thinking about building a new computer, I spend 6 months to a year kind of really digging back into it.
So
making sure what I want.
Be really sure if you decide to build your own computer, plan it out ahead of time. Make sure that everything that you're buying, you know what you're buying, you know what you're getting into, and that you have checked the specs. Make sure that everything will fit, because you might end up buying, I've known people who went and bought, their motherboard and their CPU only to find out that their DDR was DDR Generation 2, not DDR Generation 3. so they couldn't use the RAM that they bought for their computer, or they bought a motherboard that could only run AMD processors and they went and bought an Intel processor. That happens all the time.
Now, there are companies out there, and I don't have a particular list in front of me, unfortunately, my apologies, that actually have a basic build list together. They have high-end systems to low-end systems, all with modern specs that allow you to say if you wanted that, you could just buy that and you'd have a pretty kick-ass computer.
Now, there are websites out there that they will build you a computer for you for a little bit extra, but it still comes with high-tech. It's still high-tech gaming gear. One of the things that I personally recommend is if you've never built a computer before and you have a couple like extra 100 laying around, buy a refurbished computer and start building from there. Buy a really inexpensive $200 refurbished computer and pull it apart, see how it works, figure it out, and you can get a decent hard drive and some good RAM out of it anyway.
Now, the other thing I would suggest, and by the way, this isn't something I particularly follow, but I've been building computers for years, is if you've never done a computer build, they have these static straps. Basically what it is it grounds you. Now, you can bypass getting something like this, and some people agree, some people disagree on the particular one point is as long as you're touching metal, you're grounding yourself. The reason why that's important is computer parts are extremely sensitive. You can easily fry RAM just by having too much static.
Oh my God.
And so one way to do it, and this is kind of what I do, is I install the power supply first, plug in the power supply. I always keep one part of my body, whether it's a forearm or not, always touching the metal, the metal of the frame, the computer frame. That way, I'm not going to fry, my RAM. And while RAM is cheap, if you fry all your RAM, it does add up.
Right.
And that's pretty much number one, is just make sure you're not going to fry anything. Everything else is really easy. The only thing that I really hate is putting the CPU fan on. They use these little pins, and you have to push with decent force to get them through.
Yeah.
Now, so you see your motherboard bend, and between me and you, my current motherboard cost me $300. And so I'm pushing on a $300 motherboard that I may or may not be able to replace. So that always makes me a little nervous. But, once you've done it a couple dozen times, that nervousness is just like, you do get over it. Trust me.
Well, one of the things you also need to keep in mind as far as like grounding yourself, never build a computer on carpet. That sounds ridiculous just saying it, but you'd be surprised how many people I see, especially in YouTube tutorials, that are just building their computer on carpet. Like that is the most static electric.
I'm guilty of doing that.
Oh my God.
I've never fried a computer component, at least not in the last decade. But no, Shay's right. What you want to do is if you have a kitchen table, what I recommend is removing the tablecloth, or if you get a tablecloth, something that's not plastic.
Right.
Put it on top of there and just go to town.
And before you get started, always touch the metal of the case. And I know you kind of mentioned that earlier.
And
something else
the other thing, there's a couple of things I recommend, but one thing I do highly recommend is get one of those, what do you call them, accordion portfolios, and put every single manual that you got, no matter how insignificant it is, put it in that portfolio, tie it up, write the date and computer on it. Trust me, if something goes south on you, you're going to have to go back to it. One of the things you do use it for is if you're having motherboard issues. Some motherboards will beep at you. It'll be like a beep, 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 and that'll tell you, okay, you're having this issue.
Yes.
Other motherboards actually have a little diagnostic screen built in. It'll be like A26, and it'll say, okay, A26 is this. This is the reason why you want to keep the motherboard manual. Now, the other thing on video cards is you have to decide when you're buying the motherboard if you want to go Crossfire, SLI, or just one. And what that is that's multiple video cards. Now, my current computer, I'm using 2 video cards, and I'm basically using both those video cards to power one monitor each. Now, I'm video editing, and granted, SLI may not be the best for video editing, but it allows me to play what I'm editing using just straight one monitor in one screen. That helps a lot to save the processing power for the changes I'll be making later.
So one of the things you mentioned earlier about like plugging in your fan to your CPU and how that kind of bothers you.
Always has.
One of the things that gets me is if you get a nice shell, right? And so you'll have the shell where you have like all these different things you have to plug into the bottom of the and so you got to figure out, okay, so which one do I have to plug in? You'll get all these little cords. It's like, so where do I plug in the LED? Where do I plug in the power? Where do I plug in? And that can be a little tricky.
And this you actually reminded me of my number one thing. Before everything else, even before grounding, spend money on a decent case. I've bought in $50 cases, $80 cases, and always regretted it. If you have a local Fry's or a computer building store by you, go there, take a look. Generally, I spend $100 and more in cases, and I know that sounds a lot, but the more money you spend, the better case you're going to get. And that's in build quality a lot of the times.
It depends on the build you're doing.
True. I mean, I build this is for tower cases, but I still, even if you're buying like a low profile computer, I still think spending a little bit more for the higher model is usually better in my experience.
I don't know. Well, one of the things that I always make sure, and I didn't do this last time, and I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot about it, is make sure that the power supply is at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah. No. Okay. So I guess there are some caveats because I agree. The power supply on the bottom is a little bit easier.
It's a little easier. It's easier for the install. You don't have to worry as much about it falling. Like, I've never had that happen, but it's something that I'm always afraid of.
And if I was to say, along with that, if you really into making your case look clean, modular is the way to go.
Right. Well, and there are some that where you can put your cables on the like backside.
That's what mine is, and it's kind
does mine.
It's kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, but it keeps your cables like cable organization is very important. You don't want your little cables getting caught in your fans.
You know, it's funny. I actually don't care. Like, I'm don't get me wrong. I want to clean the computer, but if I have to, I'll just tape it.
You can bother. There's tapes, zip ties are your best friend. And it looks like we're coming up on a break, ladies and gentlemen. So when we get back, we're going to talk to you a little bit more about some of the benefits and some suggestions for building computers. We're also going to talk about how you can use pennies to stop your computer from overheating. All right, we'll see you in a bit.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, Jonathan, was about spending a little bit of money on your case. Now, I think you can get inexpensive cases that are perfect for your suitability. You just need to be able to, like you were saying, go to the store, look at the case, decide what you want. I've seen some really inexpensive cases that work perfectly. Like, for example, the case that I have right now, it was, like $30, but it's super sturdy, and it's bigger than anything I'll ever need.
So maybe this is just from my experience. I've bought in cheap cases, and almost every cheap case I've ever had has gone south. I bought a cheap temporary case, and it ended up causing shorts in my computer.
Oh, whoa.
And literally something it supported half my motherboard, and it would touch metal, and it was I actually had to end up having to rebuild that computer later on.
So, I mean, just like, did you buy the case online?
No, it was 100% online. That's one of the reasons seeing the case in person is benefit. But from my experience, especially if you're going to buy online, more money is generally going to get better. Now, that's not always the case. I mean, it is true that you can buy $100 and something case, and it's janky. I don't know. Usually, the couple things I aim for is metal, the power supply on the bottom. How wide is the case? Now, I normally like a little bit of a wider case just because I want to get a little bit of an aftermarket PC cooler. Now, there's a couple of different ones in that. If you want passive has no fan. Ones have fan. There's literally a ton of options, including going water cooling.
Careful with that.
Yeah. Luckily, now they have sealed units, but unfortunately, we could literally go down the rabbit hole of PC building, and it's actually a conversation I love, but I know we have a great story.
Real quick before we go, one of the things that I actually do when I look for a case is I just look for how cool it looks, like first and foremost, and then figure out, okay, so how big is this? Will I be able to fit everything? And a lot of times I'll buy something a lot bigger than what I need just so that way I know I have room.
For me, I just don't want a beige box, so it doesn't matter as much as it used to.
Right. So one of the things that this is an interesting little article, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. Now, this article talks about using pennies to stop your computer from overheating. So basically what it says is, and this is for laptops, not for desktops. Sorry, guys. Now, what it is so you want to get if your computer is overheating and growling like a honey badger that's just been bothered, what they say to do is take pennies and line them up along the screen right above the keyboard, and it's supposed to work as a heat sink.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially the idea is that the pennies, being made of copper, are going to pull up some of that heat and kind of stop the growling and help your computer run a little bit better.
Through the plastic?
Through the plastic. I don't know. I've had my computer get pretty hot when using my laptop, running games that I really shouldn't. I don't know if this is really going to be that helpful. I can understand it maybe pulling away a bit of heat, but not enough, not as much as a laptop cooler that you put on your lap.
See, that would be better. The other thing is just taking a can of compressed air and blowing out the vents.
Yes. Every once in a while, if you are a PC or Mac user, a can of air is like the second best friend of a PC user. Just get some of that. Air out your computer every once in a while. Don't let dust collect.
Oh, by the way, you know why this only works for laptops? I can open up the side of my computer case.
Right. No, on one of my first builds for a computer, I did the refurbished unit. And when I installed my video card was too big for the case. And I didn't want to go out and buy a new case. Well, another thing, one of my fans was broken, and it was an old XP where I couldn't replace the fan. I actually found a replacement fan later for it. But they weren't now computers are a lot more modular than they were.
Oh, sorry. You just reminded me of something. If you have a Dell, HP, some of these companies use proprietary motherboards. Now, if you want to upgrade that, you're going to want to make sure that you don't have a proprietary motherboard. I bought a Dell XPS one time, had a split motherboard.
Oh.
So a little word of wisdom from a gentleman who's run into that issue.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're right.
Forget this.
So I went and bought a really nice graphics card because I couldn't run anything past 2008 on this refurbished XP that I bought. So I went and bought a really nice graphics card, and I realized that the graphics card was too big for the case. So I just pulled off the side and cut a hole in the side of the case so that way I could fit the graphics card. And then I realized that the fan wasn't working. So I just bought a little mini fan and put it right next to the case and just left it open. So that was like my first rig before I built my supercomputer.
Now, I was going to say, I wanted to switch stories because I don't want to run out on this segment. I think this is a pretty interesting story.
All right, go ahead.
If anybody knows about the problems the FCC and United States have been having a little bit with broadband, one being, for example, if you live like I do in the middle of nowhere, you're not getting fast internet.
Yeah.
Now, the FCC just lost a court battle that would have let cities build their own broadband. Now, this is not an old story. Back in .com 1, there were cities, like big cities, who were planning municipal Wi-Fi or internet connectivity. You had your local ISP, whether it was some giant monster mega thing, usually that's what it was, come by, have the state change the rules where they can't do that. Now, the Federal Communications Plan was to let cities build their own broadband network, had a major roadblock today as the Federal Appeals Court ruled that communications was overstepping its authority. Now, this is a bad thing in a lot of ways because for me personally and for a lot of people I know, our favorite cable company is not going to run cable to the middle of nowhere. There's no reason to. They won't gain any money. Now, the positive side of all that is now in a lot of rural areas, there's what's called WIP, Wireless Internet Provider. There's at least 2 in my area. But this is still really bad. I mean, say San Francisco, for example, was tired of Ma Bell and having slow speeds. The city of San Francisco, by the way, this is something I actually would see them doing, could build their own amazing Wi-Fi or cable network. I see them doing Wi-Fi more just because I don't see them wanting to drag cables or dig up streets. And I think the way that I've read the story was, the company could said, "Hey, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that." What do you think?
This is ridiculous. So basically, like Verizon, what is it? Verizon, Xfinity, and a couple other providers pretty much have almost a monopoly on the internet industry. Like, if you want decent speeds, you need to go to these people, and you have to pay like a ton of money each month for adequate internet speeds.
The big benefit of living in a city, whether it's the Bay Area in California, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, is some of these areas have more than one telecom, more than one ISP. The big problem, at least this is how I see it, is for people like me when we don't have an option.
Right. Well, and this would be great. Like, if you had the option to switch to the city's Wi-Fi, we could get good Wi-Fi service. We could get rid of some of these big monster industries trying to take us down, like trying to control our internet. And we could, maybe give a little bit of revenue to the city, maybe like $20 a month or whatever to use their specific brand of Wi-Fi.
Now, we're going to hit a break, and the reason I want to hit a break now is I want you to think about this conversation. I want you to go to facebook.com, GSMC Technology Facebook page, and I want you to give your opinion on the lack of internet in rural and major cities.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
The FCC had argued it had the power to preempt state law when it comes to removing barriers to broadband investment and competition, as directed by the Telecommunications Act of 1996. However, the Commission is not explicitly granted permission to overrule states like this, and while the government agencies are generally given difference to interpreting their own power where a law has left them unclear, the court determined that this isn't the case. Now, I completely agree with my co-host on this. Cities should be allowed to do what they want. I mean, if they wanted to spend a couple of $1 million on Wi-Fi broadband, why not? This would, for one thing, in my opinion, this would help the poorer neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, why not give them Wi-Fi, give them the ability to have internet, then startups can come along, help these people who are in a very poor, bad situation to learn programming, to make their own businesses. This is horrible.
Right. No, I agree. I don't understand why we couldn't be allowed to do this. Like, I don't understand the reasoning behind this not being an option. I feel like this could bring great revenue to cities, start pulling people out of debt. Like, I would, like, if the city of Sacramento were to put up their own Wi-Fi and I just pay, a monthly fee, I would gladly give up Comcast.
And while we here at the GSMC's Technology Podcast, we try really hard not to get in the politics side of things, because we just want to tell you how things work or why. But the one thing we can tell you, and we will tell you, is if this is something that you agree with or disagree with, contact your Congress critter. We do think this would be helpful. I know for me and a lot of the people I live with, the best internet they can get is satellite. So for us, it would be HughesNet.
God.
The problem with satellite is a lot of the times you watch one movie, and I'm talking about like 480p, low quality YouTube videos. You could easily blow through your cap in a day. Matter of fact, you can do it in a half an hour depending on which video you're watching.
There's no internet gaming.
Oh, none at all. Matter of fact, you want to update Windows, you're going to Starbucks. I mean, that's pretty much what you're going to have to do. And so I think we've bashed our local telecoms a little bit too much. So we're going to switch off a story, and I think Shay has an interesting one for us.
So Google is working on a new operating system known as the Fuchsia. So there's not really much known about what Google's planning on doing with this. We just know that the project's name is Fuchsia. It currently exists, and it's piling code. And they're planning on building their own OS. So before, I believe Google, the Google Chromebook.
Yeah, this is running Chromium.
Yeah, and it's based loosely on Linux kernel, from what I understand.
I don't know. I'm really sorry to be doubtful and sighing all the time. I know it makes great radio, but my first thought is why? I mean, I don't really understand the use for Chromium. I get Linux. I mean, is this going to be another distro of Linux? I mean,
Well, it seems like they're trying to do a fresh start. So Google's trying to make a fresh operating system. There have been some people think that it might be to unify Chrome OS. Some people think that it might be a phone operating system because it is kind of lightweight.
Well, I wonder if this will be a unifier between Android and Chromium. Somewhere that's in the middle. It could be used one way or the other.
Maybe. I don't know. So we know that it targets modern phones and computers. We know that it's designed to be a lightweight operating system. So, this isn't going to be your...
I wonder if this is for... what was it like? One of the things when Microsoft bought Nokia is Nokia was really big in poor rural areas. I wonder if this is going to be cheaper handsets, like Android Lite, for example.
Right. And I'm very interested to see what they're going to do with this. I don't know if you know much about Google Chromebooks, but they're really not that powerful. The only thing you can do with a Chromebook is surf the internet and write a paper. So it's great for college kids. It's
pretty much, if you're in the Google world, that's what you want. But that's all you're going to get. If you want the Microsoft Word 2017, you're never going to get it on a Chromebook.
Well, you can get it using the online a lot of Microsoft Office is online now.
I don't know. It's still not as good.
Right. Now, one of the things that I think they're just trying to build an OS that's a little bit more powerful than Google Chrome. We'll see what it does in the future. But the Chromebook, is great because it's inexpensive.
Oh yeah, it's very cheap.
It's like $200 for a Chromebook.
And I know some of the versions of it you can actually dual boot with Ubuntu.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, I saw a YouTube channel do it, and they got the people did it. I'm thinking, wow, that's the only reason why I want one now is so I can actually just have a low cost, decent Ubuntu laptop. That's not an old clunker laptop that I have in a closet somewhere.
So one of the things that they've been saying is that this is from Sweetland himself. He says that it's booting reasonably well. And they've been testing it on a lot of things. So they've been testing it on Intel PCs. They've been testing it on the Acer Switch Alpha 12 laptop, although the driver work is still in process. They've been testing it on, the Raspberry Pi 3. And so it looks like they're trying it on all these different things. So it looks like maybe they're trying to make their own... Because Linux can be booted up from almost anything, if I'm not mistaken.
So the Raspberry Pi has me interested. Raspberry Pi has their own flavor of Linux, or called Raspberrian, something like that.
Something like that.
That's interesting. If anybody doesn't know what a Raspberry Pi, basically it's a very cheap credit card sized computer that if you do any sort of programming, you could make it do all sorts of things.
I'd really like to get my hands on one. They're pretty cool.
I have one at home. I'm using it as was an AirPlay receiver. AirPlay's Apple's wireless audio thing. I don't exactly know what you would call it, but basically I stream from my phone to my Raspberry Pi using what's called a digital audio converter. Plugged it to a pair of cheap computer speakers. It sounds amazing. So we're definitely going to see what's going to happen. I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical of Google. Honestly, the only thing I use of theirs is their browser and Gmail. And from my experience, those are the only two things that I think are any good. I know people, like I think my co-host Shay loves Android.
I do. I like Android.
I'm not too hip on it. One of the reasons I'm not particularly hip is I don't really like the privacy stuff for it. I don't like the fact that, I don't know, like, for example, a flashlight app had complete access to my phone. No,
that's true.
Granted, Apple is not really that better, but there are some limitations built into the operating system. Now, what I would like Android to do, and I don't know if this is possible, is allow me to install a program that sets, okay, no program is going to have access to this, and this. Is there some sort of... That's what I'm all about. Now, if there was an Android phone that had that much selectivity built in, I'd get one just to see what I could do with it. Because I'm all about privacy. Granted, I'm just a podcaster, but...
So before we go, we talked a little bit about building your own desktop. We talked a little bit about homemade heatsink
using
pennies. I mentioned some of my obscure methods for my crappy first build, and we talked a little bit about Google's new Google's new operating system?
Yeah, it's very colorful.
So one of the things that I also kind of wanted to talk about real quick, just because we talked a little bit about building your own desktop, is have you seen those like ready-built like micro desktops?
That's oddly enough, the one I'm looking at is called the Intel NUC. It's NUC.
Yeah.
We've talked about it a little bit in that podcast, and I want to turn it into a Plex server.
Nice.
And that's something that I've been jonesing to do. I just haven't figured out if I could justify the cost of the i7 version.
Now, what's pretty cool about these little boxes is it's basically a little box, but it contains just enough RAM to get you by like 4 gigabytes?
Yeah, it's nothing major.
It comes with usually an AMD processor, not a bad one, but a decent one, and it comes with a basic Linux platform. So if you're looking for something like really, really like simple or something to just kind of play around with, I'd highly recommend them because they're very inexpensive.
And I know the Intel NUC I've seen for like $800. $700. Right. And honestly, any of these computers, whether the Intel ones that I was talking about, the ones Shay talks about, they make perfect home theater computers.
Oh, definitely.
And basically what that is, it allows you to play your content, whether, say, it's the movies you have on your hard drive at home or somewhere else, or play videos from YouTube. Basically, it's like a smart TV, but with a full-fledged operating system instead of whatever crappy software the smart TVs use.
Can you get a USB remote?
Yeah, you used to. I don't know if they're as prevalent as they used to be, but yeah.
Like, would that work on a Linux operating system? That would be interesting.
If there was what used to be called Xbox Media Center, I think it's called Kodi now.
Yeah.
That has, I think it's built into the software. So yeah, if you use that, you could do it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, so like, I just think those are little cute little things that you might want to play around with a little bit. They don't come with Windows, they come with Linux. But it's just a little interesting toy that I kind of want to play with myself.
Totally. No, see, I want to see Shay get a Raspberry Pi, mainly because the Raspberry Pi 2 or the B is like $35.
Oh, nice.
And
I'm not smart enough to know what to do with it.
We'll talk off air a little bit about that. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening. As always, I want you to do me, your host, a humble favor. I want you to go to GSMC's Technology Facebook page. This is episode 24. 24. I want you to comment on this. If there's something you liked, is there a story you think it's awesome? Do you want more resources about how to build your own personal computer? Or say these small personal computers we're talking about? I want you to comment on episode 24. The other thing I want you to do is go to gsmcpodcast.com, and there's plenty of other amazing podcasts on this network, but ours, in our opinion, is one of the best because, well, we are here, your humble hosts. So we want you to subscribe to GSMC's Technology Podcast, and you can find us everywhere else on the interwebs. And as always, I want to thank you for listening.